I'm going to take the swatch that I took a picture of and put it into a repeating pattern. I want to remind you that this should not be a photograph. This should have been an actual scan. If you do end up taking a photograph because there's volume or texture that you don't want to crush, you need to check the size of the photograph and the resolution. So the image size of this is 42 inches wide, and this swatch obviously is not 42 inches wide, and the resolution is very low. So the first thing I'm going to do is change the resolution to a good output resolution for digital printing, and I would say that would be anything 200 or above. And I'm not going to click OK because then I'm going to end up with this massive file. I'm going to go right in and resize it. I don't remember the size of it, but if it's your swatch, you can measure it. I'm just going to make it 10 inches wide, maybe 12 inches wide. So at the same time I increase the resolution, I also reduce the size. And if I want to check here where it says resample, there's a few options. Nearest neighbor would be if I don't want to change the pixels at all and I just want it to use the existing pixels, which is good with graphic work. But for almost everything else, including this one, I would say just let automatic take care of it, and it'll basically resample with less pixels for the same look. I'm going to click OK. So you can see now it's the 12-inch file and the resolution increased, so no effect was lost. The next thing you're going to do is remove the background. Again, I took a picture of this on the dirty table so I can actually see the background really easily. If you scan this, the background is going to be the underside of the lid. So in either case, you need to get rid of anything that isn't part of your actual sample. And there's a couple ways you can do that. If I just pick up the whole thing or crop it, I'm going to lose important information. So I don't want to do that. So what I can do is I could use the lasso tool and just go around and select what I want to keep. So when you use the lasso tool, you're literally like looping around to collect areas that you want to. And if you want to add to your selection, you can hold the shift key down and it gives a little plus sign next to it. So that's one way to do it. And I can make sure I get all of the information that I need. Another way to do it would be to select the background and reverse my selection. So let me just finish this. Selecting everything I want to keep, and then I would put this onto its own layer. Layer, new layer via cut, and it's going to cut it out of the background and put it on its own layer. I'll move the layers menu over so that you can see the background is using whatever was in the second color chip box, and that's what it'll fill it with. So that doesn't matter because I would be throwing that whole layer away like this and only working with the artwork. So the second way you can remove the background is to use something like the quick selection tool. And what this does is it kind of lets the computer decide while you're running over things what to pick up. When it's a high contrast background, this works really well. If it was a low contrast and this was a white background, you would accidentally pick up a lot of your swatch too. So those are the two ways I would try, and the lasso is more reliable because you're doing it by hand. So I would say with this type of selection, select inverse. So I'm actually getting the swatch now and say new layer via cut again, but I'll show you what I mean by the background colors affecting how this gets picked up. So select, or I'm sorry, layer, new layer via cut. Okay. So I have this background layer, and if I want to keep it, I can, but it's not useful anymore. You can also just clear it out with the white. So edit, fill with the background color, which is here. Lots of ways to fill the background, but that's one reliable way. So now I have a swatch that I can start putting into repeat. Save your file, save it under a new name so that you have versions of it that you can go back to. So I'm going to save this as swatch work in progress, and I'm going to save it as a Photoshop file. because a Photoshop file is going to keep the most information, and I'm going to put it on my desktop here. So I have this file, and now I'm going to work on putting it into repeat. Now the repeat we talked about yesterday with this swatch, I first have to develop the artwork so that I'm not just working with one big chunk of painting, but I think it's worth showing you what one big chunk of painting would look like with this kind of repeat. So I'm going to start there. I need to make a bigger canvas size, image, canvas size. I'm going to leave the artwork in the center, and I'm going to make the width and height 30 inches so I have plenty of space around me. I like to use the hand tool here and double click on it to reset the artwork. You can also just use the zoom tool if you want to. So I have this artwork here. If I want to continue getting rid of the stuff around the edge, that's fine too. You'll see pretty quickly it's not going to be a part of what we're doing. So I'm just going to go with a straightforward repeat, not changing the artwork, and saving it intermittently so I can go back to this point. So how I do a repeat is I put the artwork in the upper left-hand corner. So you just let it click in there. And then I duplicate this layer, and the fastest way to do that is I'm using the move tool, and I hold down the option key, and it gives me a double arrow, which allows me to just click and drag to duplicate. You can also duplicate by doing it in the layers menu if you want to. So because this is in the upper left-hand corner, it's snapping into the side margin, so I don't have to worry about lining it up if I start in the upper corner. So I'm going to bring this in, and I'm literally going to overlap it a little bit, just a little bit. And I'm going to use the eraser tool, which is on my toolbar here, with a brush size setting, which I can change here. And leaving the opacity alone. The flow just means like how quickly the eraser's working. It's kind of like in a shower if the water pressure is high or low. So I'm going to use this, and I'm basically just going to erase away the top layer to reveal the bottom layer and see if the repeat can just kind of be developed that way. Looks like I should raise the flow so I don't have to go over the spots. Every once in a while I'll lift that layer and see what I'm starting to reveal, just so that I don't end up going too far. And then here, I don't know why I'm working around that blue thing, but you get the point. Yikes. Okay, so there, and then you can see I'm creating this seamless join because I've overlapped it a little bit, and now I'm just letting the shapes overlap. We're getting very lucky with this artwork. This is an area where you could probably speed the video up because I'm just going to go across the whole thing, but I'm also being careful not to like go too far and try to maintain as much of the artwork as I can. I'm using my keyboard to select the hand tool to move things over, and then going back to the eraser. And I'm going to double click on the hand to zoom out, and you can see that looks pretty good. It looks pretty organic the way it's joining together. If you don't like that something's happening, of course you can go in and fix it. Like if I just feel like, well, it's weird that that feathering is happening on top of another shape, let me just erase this away. And then you can see here also that like this is opening up, and I can use the clone tool to fix that. So I'm going to use the clone tool to adjust what's happening here. So that means I go to the clone stamp tool. If I don't want to merge these layers together yet, I can say use all the layers. Actually, I don't want to use the background, so I'll say current and below. And then in order to decide where I want to start cloning from, I would hit the option key, and it gives me this little crosshair. So I decide where I want to start working from, and then I just start cloning a little bit. And the problem with the clone tool is it works from the radius of the beginning point, and if you go too far, it will pick up things that you don't want. So I just undid that. So I end up using a lot of starting points. Like I'll adjust my starting point over and over again to try to get some sort of like not too weird cloning thing. And I could also pull some from over here because that kind of looks like the same color. And I'm resetting that beginning point over and over to try to hide that I'm cloning. And then in this case here, I would be inclined to like get rid of this as well. So the trick to the clone tool is don't just clone and keep going. Like don't just start here and then keep going, because it's going to pick up everything that your starting point is tracking over. So I'm going to double click out. Looks pretty good to me. I feel like I can merge these two layers now. So layer, merge down. And then I'm going to save my file now, because this is the point where I decide, do I do a straight repeat or a half drop repeat? So I'm going to save it at this point so I can go back and change it to either a straight or a half drop. So I have a repeat here, but I also have all this extra stuff at the top and bottom. So what I want to do here is cut out the repeat. Find something obvious about a quarter of the way down, like I see this circle, and then identify it again. So the easiest way for me to crop this would be to pull a guide down and set it next to the thing I've identified. And then, because I don't trust myself to find that exact pixel down here, what I'll usually do is take something from the corner, new layer via copy, and then I call this the floating selection, and I would bring it down and let it find that spot again. So I'm going to zoom in so you can see. The guide told me where the repeat starts. I pick up the corner and put that where the repeat ends and put another guide. So you can see that's where that's going. And then I get rid of the floating selection. I made that technique up because of so many times that I was off by a pixel or two and it showed up in the repeat. So now that I know where my repeat is, I can select that area or use the crop tool and say crop. And it will give me an exact repeat. How do I know it's an exact repeat? Well, if I make the canvas size 200% again and leave the artwork at the top, I can use the Option key with the Move tool to duplicate that, bring it down and check it. And I'll move the guide so you can see. Very nice. This actually is a nice looking repeat, but it is going to show the repeat really literally. So that's why I'm doing two versions. So after I've done one repeat, my next decision is, do I want to do a straight repeat or a half drop? So if I wanted to do a straight repeat, I'd take this unit, duplicate it, and move it over and do the exact same thing. So I would be erasing, overlapping and erasing. And actually, I just realized I should save it at this point too, because this is going to tell me, this is going to be the exact moment where I can do the half drop if I want to. So sorry for stuttering there. So I'm going to duplicate this. Option key in the Move tool gives me a double arrow. I'm going to move it over. I'm going to overlap it, and I'm going to see if this works. I could also underlap it if I want to, and in this case I think I'm going to underlap it, because that way I get to keep these nice shapes that are happening instead of this one that's cut off. So I'm going to go underneath here, and I'm going to make sure I'm on the top layer, and I'm just going to go in and do a little erasing. You could also use the lasso tool if you're like, oh, I want to do this and make it perfect and just delete that. You could, but that's not something I would feel confident in. So I'm going to do this, and again, this is a good time to maybe speed up because it's going to take me a minute. But the other thing I want to point out is that if your eraser is creating like hard lines, you can also soften the edges so that when you're erasing, it's like a little less obvious. It really depends on the type of artwork that you have, because some artwork is going to need crisp lines and other is going to do better with soft lines. Okay, I got lucky on that piece. And then I'm going to move down, moving the top layer to see like what is under there. It's like, okay, well, I'll get rid of this stuff and see this other shape. And again, I'm curious as to what I'm revealing here. I think it looks pretty good. I'm going to double click out. I'm going to merge these two layers together, layer, merge down. And then I'm going to bring a guide over. I had said like a quarter of the way over, because you don't want to crop from over here, because this includes the area that isn't fixed yet. You want to crop from the center. So I usually bring the guide over about a quarter of the way, make a selection in the upper left-hand corner. That's my floating selection. New layer via copy. And it just gives me this floating thing that I can find again here. So I wish I could make a video that included every type of artwork, but there's going to be such a range that some of this you're going to have to intuit how to work with your own artwork. But I'm going to take this down to just the repeat unit, image crop. I'm going to clear the guides away so that I can see my repeat when I do this. And I'm going to make the canvas size 200% in both directions, but I am leaving the artwork in the corner. Oh, wrong, 200%. And duplicate, merge. I did that with a Command E on the keyboard. Duplicate, merge. And that would be the pattern. And it looks really good, but it doesn't look organic the way the actual swatch does. It doesn't feel like it has this moments of like spontaneity. It looks like something that was put into repeat as a grid. And so you kind of have to make your own judgment. Is that the artwork? Is that what the artwork's suggesting, or is the artwork suggesting something else? But before we fix the artwork, I am going to turn this into a half drop repeat so that you can see what that looks like, because that will disguise this a little bit more. So because I just saved it at the right point, I'm going to go to File, Revert, and it'll bring me back to the vertical repeat only, and I can show you how to do the half drop. So with a half drop, you have the repeat, fixed here. And then you duplicate this, and instead of going right next to it, you would literally go halfway down. And the great thing about Photoshop is it's snapping me halfway down. And then I would make a duplicate and put that together and merge those two layers. So right now I have something full repeat and the exact same repeat, but halfway shifted down. And then moving it up and down is going to screw this up. So don't do that. What I usually want to do now is select this and put it on its own layer to crop out that excess stuff. So select all, layer, new layer via cut, like I'm cutting it out of the background, and then I'm trashing that layer, and then moving it. So now if I move it, I know that I'm messing it up. So I'm going to go over, and again, I think underlapping makes the most sense here. And I'm going to erase away. I think I might do a faster erasing just to get through this. Oops, I'm on the wrong layer. Just to get through this part more quickly, so forgive me if it's not perfect. But now what I've made is, what I'm working on making here is I'm making a straight repeat unit that contains a half drop, because Photoshop doesn't really care about my half drop. It just wants something to connect in a grid. So when you make a half drop in Photoshop, you're actually making two repeats that act as a straight repeat. So All right, I'm gonna have to be happy with that. So I'm merging these together. And then to crop the horizontal, again, we don't need the stuff on the outside because that's not fixed. I bring the guideline over, make my selection, new layer via copy, and then I don't look for it here because remember it's halfway down. I look for it here. And I look for the end of my repeat. A common mistake is that people think this is the end, but remember that was the beginning. The upper left-hand corner was the beginning. So make sure you crop it from the beginning. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people not crop the correct size and then end up with a bad repeat. All right, so I've selected that. I'm gonna crop the corner or crop the section, image crop. I'm gonna get rid of the guides. And I'm going to deselect, and now I'm going to make that straight repeat that contains a half drop. So image, canvas size, moving the artwork to the left-hand side, making it 200%, and duplicating this, moving it back into position. And then I can just flatten the whole thing, you know, merge the whole thing together and then step this out. I think this is gonna look pretty good actually. So select all, new layer via cut. This is how I cut things off the background. I'm gonna make the canvas size 200% by 200%. And ooh, this looks nice, but it's still pretty obvious. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, it looks good, but this is a very obvious repeat. So I think we have to go to the second version, which is fixing the artwork first. Your artwork might work well with this type of technique because it might not be such an obvious clump. Okay, so I'm gonna end the video here and I'm gonna start a new one with the artwork for video 2.